Hi, this is Estev. In this video, we'll be taking a look at Mihaly's flow theory in the context of one of the most difficult places for many people to perform well in, like presenting information on a stage. Why is flow important? How is flow connected to collectively intelligent communication? That's what we'll answer in this video. But first, let's start by defining what flow actually is. In positive psychology, they call it flow. To performers, they call it being in the zone. According to Mihaly's theory, flow is a mental state in which a person is fully immersed in a feeling of energized focus and enjoyment of the activity. People feel that they lose their sense of time and space. Many people, however, do not experience flow very often or even at all. Instead, they experience control, relaxation, boredom, apathy, worry, anxiety, or arousal. The colored areas on this map are simply different experiences which are alternatives to flow. The state of flow has been described as the optimal experience in which one feels a high sense of gratification. In order for you to be able to reach the experience of flow, it's required for you to first be motivated and then be able to overcome your challenges to achieve the state of optimal experience, which also gives you a sense of really great life satisfaction. In practice, this means that you need to be able to find a balance between the perceived challenge of the task at hand while also feeling skilled enough to overcome these challenges. Let's walk through a self-evaluation of your flow. Measuring your flow is easiest if you anchor it to a specific situation. So think back to a recent situation in which you'd like to evaluate your flow in. Could be a meeting or a workshop, a review, working alone, giving a presentation, or even a conflict resolution or mediation. Do you have one in mind? I'll show you an example of how to measure flow for the situation of giving a presentation, to show you how actually to evaluate it after it's happened, but you could also evaluate it beforehand if you wanted to. In this particular situation that you just chose, how did you perceive your challenge on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is not challenging at all, 4 is slightly challenging, 7 is quite challenging, and 10 is extremely challenging? Now remember that in flow, it's all about your perception and feeling of the challenge, not the actual challenge itself. Think back to your role in this situation. Were you just a participant, or were you a more responsible role in the meeting? How challenging did that feel to you? Let's assume presenting on stage for you was an 8 out of 10 challenge. You've probably all played battleships where an X and a Y coordinate gives you where your bomb lands in the sea. The same idea here. The challenge on the left is like the Y coordinate from your score. Next, think back to the same meeting. How skillful did you feel in that situation? Give yourself a score between 1 and 10, where 1 is that you're not at all feeling competent about this meeting. 4 is that you were feeling slightly competent, 7 quite competent, and 10 you were really confident about your skills in this given situation. Now again, remember that it's not about your actual skills, experience, or even education. It's only about how you felt about your skills in this situation. Let's assume you felt a skill level of 8 out of 10 in a presentation. So like in the battleships game, this gives you the X coordinate. This also gives you a red point on the map, which as you can see lands pretty much in the flow zone. But before we can be sure if you really were in the flow, we need to check your level of motivation. On a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is that you were not motivated, you didn't really care, 4 is slightly motivated, 7 quite motivated, and 10 really motivated. This is where we add a new component to the battleship metaphor. Let's think of the motivation as the wind force that pushes your bomb either upwards or downwards, depending on your level of motivation. Now let's assume that you had a bad day and your motivation was actually only 3 out of 10. Even though you had a high perceived challenge and high skill, This is most likely going to drag down your experience, symbolized by the red dot, out of the flow zone and into the apathy zone. Let's go through the 4 main zones where your red dot could land in. On the left side is the stress zone, made of arousal, anxiety, and worry. Let's have a look at this. In here, you experience feelings from worry to anxiety. At best, you might feel aroused or excited to get started, yet slightly nervous. Not really flow. At worst, you feel really nervous or worried about a situation. You end up in the stress zone when your skills don't match the challenges that you're facing. Like in this example where the challenge level might be 8, say, and a perceived skill level could be only 4. This takes you directly between the anxiety and arousal zone. Also, if your motivation is low, for example 4 out of 10, it's like a wind dragging you down on the map towards more anxiety than arousal. The only way to get out of this zone is to lower your perceived challenge, for example by changing a deadline or the scope of a piece of work to do. In this case, if motivation was actually higher, the other solution to reach flow would be learning new skills and going higher on your skill score. The next zone is the danger zone. Here, you most likely feel bored, a lack of motivation, or simply worried. You might feel that there's no purpose or role for you in this situation. If someone spends too much time in this zone, there's a risk of falling into deep apathy or even depression. That's why we call it the danger zone. You end up in this zone when your perception of both your challenge and your skill levels are low. This puts your experience in the worry, apathy, boredom, or danger zone. And you have really no motivation to do anything about it. It can actually drag you down further into an experience of apathy. The way out of this zone is to first try to figure out how to build up motivation to do something about it. How much do you even want to feel motivated could be a first question to ask yourself. What do you need to be more motivated? And would upping the challenge or adding new skills help your motivation, for example? Often this happens when we don't even believe we could reach flow in a particular situation. It feels out of reach. The next zone is the desired flow zone, where you feel peacefully excited and energized by the situation. You might even lose track of time, which just flies by. You feel fully focused and immersed into the activity at hand. You feel like you are in control and enjoy your experience. In order for you to reach flow, you need a high enough perception of challenge and a high enough perception of skills. This places you in the flow zone. Having a high motivation to keep overcoming the challenges at hand will keep you right in the peak of the experience of flow. The challenge in this zone is not anymore how to get there, but how to stay there. If you are the only one in the group in flow, you are at risk of losing focus on the others. How might you help others to reach flow with you? Sometimes people focus so much on creating individual flow for themselves that they by accident block the opportunity for flow from the others. In this case, group flow is absolutely out of your reach. You can help others and the whole group to find and maintain their flow by adapting the level of challenge, for example by bringing more structure to the process and reducing the time allocated for the meeting. The last zone is the comfort zone. Here, you most likely feel in control and relaxed. There's not much challenge for you, so you're able to do your thing and the rest of the time you can just sit back and relax and enjoy the situation. Of course, this might be fun, but the risk is that due to the lack of challenge, you slowly start to feel bored. After a while, you might start to zone out and lose your focus. You end up in the comfort zone when your skills exceed the challenges in the given situation. Like in this example where the challenge level is only 2, let's say, yet the skill levels might be 8. This places you in the experience of relaxation, which is part of the comfort zone. Even with a high motivation, you'll probably not reach flow and stay at best in a state of control. Or if your motivation drops very quickly, you can experience relaxation or even boredom and disengagement from the meeting. In order for you to avoid dropping into danger zone and aiming to reach the flow zone, you might want to think about how often you are stepping out of your comfort zone and challenging yourself in order to reach flow. Maybe you're able to take new active roles, for example, in your meetings to avoid being bored or lose your motivation. How is flow connected to collectively intelligent communication? For a group to work effectively together, it's important that each person in the group understands how to be responsible for their own level of flow. When each person understands their needs more accurately in terms of challenge, motivation, and skill, it becomes possible for collective intelligence to emerge. We'll cover concrete suggestions of how to increase or lower your level of perceived challenge in the video on the 4 levels of challenge. This summary infographic is designed for you to print and keep handy to either prepare or debrief the process of your events, meetings, or any other situations where you would like to measure flow. So how can you use flow as an individual? Use this quick self-evaluation of flow to help you figure out if you need to take on more challenges or learn more skills. It's an easy way to start taking extreme ownership of your own experience at work and avoid outsourcing your flow to others. If you'd like to understand how to increase your flow, I suggest you print this infographic and keep it handy for your next meeting. What about as a team leader? Or when you do check-ins to align participants or checkouts to reflect on how to improve your meeting flow is a great tool. If you draw this on a flip chart or have it on a board in a meeting, as a leader, facilitator, or host, it's a very interesting way to test your assumptions about how to handle each group. You can use this as a check-in by asking each participant to give their flow position on the map with post-its. You can even do this without names to make it anonymous. If the majority of the group is bored, it might be assigned to change the process, for example, by speeding up the meeting. Now that you know how to measure your flow in meetings, I suggest reflecting on how much flow you usually try and reach in meetings. If you don't reach flow, why is it? Is it too much challenge, too little competence, or lack of motivation? This can be an interesting diagnostic tool to make your work more efficient, enjoyable, and flowing.